Hi, my name is Paolo, and if you're watching this video, you may be an experienced analyst exploring website analytics for the first time. Or you might as well be a beginner just starting out in digital marketing and has no idea where to start. Whoever you may be, don't worry. I'm an analyst too, and I know very well how overwhelming and frustrating Google Analytics can feel at first. It's no secret that GA4 can feel quite confusing considering the incredible amount of data that it stores and the unclear information that you can find online about that platform. And it's really easy to get lost. Especially if you're a beginner just starting out, you must be wondering, which KPIs should I focus on? And more importantly, what do they really mean? In this video, I will walk you through the three main KPIs that you should focus on to track the performance of your digital product, being a website or an application. More specifically, we will focus on what GA4 defines as metrics, which are quantitative variables like sessions, events, and users. If metrics are quantitative variables, dimensions are qualitative variables, such as session source or country shipping, and we will cover them in the next videos. So in this video, we will cover three main arguments: events, users, and sessions. Let's talk about the first one, events. An event is a distinct interaction that happens in your website within one session. Events can be many different things. They can be a session start, an add to cart, or a view product. But you can also create ad hoc events to track the interactions that you desire. What you need to know is that before jumping into tailor-made events, you can start with what GA4 already tracks by default. In fact, GA4 records and tracks hundreds of events by default. And trying to analyze all of them can be quite tricky, and it's usually not a good idea, because it's very easy to lose focus on what actually matters. And that is exactly why you should start focusing on key events. Key events are the most important interactions, the ones that truly matter for your business success. For example, if you're running an e-commerce, a key event might be represented by a conversion. So if you're a beginner, make sure to start with the default events, but also be aware that the possibilities are endless. Custom events can become quite handy when you need to track more specific users' behavior or you need to focus on upper funnel or lower funnel. But again, if you're just starting out and, for example, you're running an e-commerce, these default events that are tracked by default on GA4 will be just fine for you. Events such as checkouts, e-commerce purchases, items viewed, items added to cart, or views. Before going on and talk about users, I would like to say a few words about one of the most popular KPI in web marketing, clicks. A click is one of the most common terms used in digital marketing. And it is possible that your manager has asked you, how many clicks are we getting on our website? Well, let's clarify this. A click in G4, it's not a universal metric. As mentioned, the platform is fully event-based, and a click only exists in the data if it has been explicitly tracked as an event. It is true, though, that many users' interactions and events are typically triggered by clicks. But it is also true that they are measured as events with specific names, for example, add to cart, and not as generic clicks. This distinction matters for two reasons. First, not all clicks generate events. For example, clicking on an accordion or on a UI element typically does not generate an event. Secondly, not all events are clicks. For example, a scroll, it is recorded in GA4 as an event, but it does not involve a click. Or session start, it doesn't involve any click. So rather than trying to track clicks universally, the best approach in GA4 will be to define the key events that truly matter for your business. For example, the subscribers if you have an app, the conversions or the add to cart if you have an e-commerce, and the views per sessions if you own a blog. A general rule of thumb that you can use to identify which are the events that are key for your business is to select the events that generally indicate and represent strong user engagement and purchase intent. So now that you know that events are the fundamental building blocks of GA4, let's move on to users. First, it's really important to understand that users, but also sessions in GA4 are derived constructs. In fact, the users are calculated through the reprocessing of events, and this process can take up to 48 hours and strongly depends on Google's algorithms. Especially if you're a beginner, this might sound a bit confusing, but don't worry. Check out this video where I explain the 3 fundamental elements on which your marketing data is built. Okay, let's get back to the users. The definition of a user is very simple. It's anyone who has interacted with your website or your app. 2 different visitors of your websites are counted as 2 different users. A returning visitor to your website, even across device, is still counted as the same user, regardless of the time that has passed between the 2 visits. In fact, this is all possible thanks to the cookies and to the specific identifiers such as client ID or user's ID that are stored in the data layer. But what happens technically? Well, GA4 takes time, usually up to 48 hours, to track and process all the interactions, the events that the users have made with your website and reattribute them to them. And this happens even across multiple sessions. The metrics that are the result of this reprocessing are usually called user-based or user-scoped and are metrics such as total users, returning users, and active users. I know that this might sound very straightforward to you right now, but trust me, when you put on many levels of complexity such as segments or dimensions, it becomes quite complicated. Okay, let's move forward and look at the last argument for the day, sessions. Sessions measure the website traffic of your website or digital product. Sessions are usually independent from the number of page views or events that occur within that session. A session always starts with the event session start and expires after 30 minutes of inactivity of the user. But of course, if the user remains active and interacts with your website, it can last much more than 30 minutes. A session is essentially the period of activity that starts when a user lands on your website and ends when they leave. For example, a user might land on your website, navigate through the pages, add a product to the basket, and then leave. The next day, the same user comes back to your website, goes straight to the cart, and purchases something. Well, in that case, those are considered as 2 separate sessions. But of course, the users is only one. Technically, on the GA4 side, the processing logic is exactly the same as per what happens to users. So that means that the GA4 can take up to 48 hours to process the data and attribute the events, the interactions, to the proper session. This data processing brings to life metrics that are session-based, such as sessions, engaged sessions, or bounce rate. But here comes the interesting bit. Users and sessions, if taken in absolute values, don't tell you much about a website's performance. And if you're an analyst, let me give you one piece of advice to better interpret your web marketing data. So let's look at a practical example. We have 2 metrics, sessions and users, split by 2 different websites, website A and website B. Total sessions exceed the number of total users, and that is quite normal. That's because users can generate more than one session. Total users, on the other hand, count each user's only one, regardless of how many sessions they generated within that time frame. So as you can see very well, failing to account for this difference might lead to misinterpretation of the data and incorrect conclusions. It's the relationship between these metrics that reveal the most important and interesting insights about your business and your user base. On website A, in fact, users appear much more engaged than website B. On average, users generate at least 2 sessions. They tend to return to the website at least once. Website B, on the other hand, seems to have a more transactional user base that does not tend to return to the website. So in this video, you have learned the 3 fundamental metrics, sessions, users, and events that you need to know to have a complete view of your website performance. Let's make a quick recap. First of all, events. Rather than trying to track clicks, the best approach in G4 is to identify the best key events for your business. How? choose the events that represent meaningful business outcomes or strong engagement and purchase intent. Second, users and sessions. These two KPIs only make sense when they're compared. It's their relationship, not their absolute values, that truly gives you insights about your business. So compare users and sessions if you want to understand how engaged or transactional your user base truly is. Well, if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel or leave a comment down below. Bye!